Hey everybody, I'm
We're
Kim
live.
Vij. I'm from the Educator Spin on It, and I'd like to welcome you to our Hangout on Air tonight. We are here kind of talking about photography, prompted through the Kid Blogger Network. We brought a special guest in. Her name is Amy Lee, and she blogs at The Connection We Share. And I'm excited to hear the tips that you have to share today. So Amy, go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about you.
Yeah, hey, I'm Amy, and a bit about me. I love photography. The whole reason why I got into photography is so that I can have really great pictures of my kids, and I do have a photography business. And to be honest, the reason why I wanted to go into my own photography, to have my own photography business, is to write off my camera. Anyways, yeah, so today I just noticed that with the season change that we're getting less and less daylight every day. So, and even for me, I find that to be a challenge as well, to take really well lit photos with so little light and so little time frame to do your activities in as well. So I thought it might be helpful for everybody to take some tips on what to do during this time when we don't have a lot of light. So I have a list of stuff that we can go over. So one thing we have to go through, and this is like really boring technical camera talk, but I'll make it as interesting for you as I can, is you need to understand how your camera takes a picture. So what the camera does is actually really smart. So you point your camera at something, and it looks at the whole screen, and it figures out how bright or how dark or what's happening in your picture, and it decides what settings it would use to take your picture. So now there's three things that your camera would alter to take your picture so that the exposure would be a good one. So exposure meaning that it would be a well-lit picture. So the three things are, and I'm going to show you some images as well. So let me just share my screen. So this is something I found on Pinterest. It's the photography cheat sheet. So the three things that your camera will do is it would change either the aperture, which is like the size of, what do you call this? I guess the ring, kind of like your iris or your pupil. I forgot which one is which, but it would change that. It would change your shutter speed, which means that how fast is your camera taking its picture. So you can have, like this example here, you can have it at 1 second, which is really, really slow, or you can have it really fast at, say, 1/1000 of a second. So it's like really fast. So this is to capture motion, and this here is mostly for night shots, and if you're going at 1 second, you're probably using a tripod. And then the third thing that your camera adjusts is your ISO. So these are all these numbers here, 100, 200, 400, 640. So the thing with ISO is, the rule of thumb is that you always want to use as low of an ISO as you can. So here it says that you would use ISO 100 for when you're outside, when it's really sunny. And then you would use a higher ISO, like 3200, when there's low light. And the problem with going higher in your ISO is that your pictures would be grainy. Now, for us bloggers, because our images are only, what is it, like 900 pixel across, so ISO, I would totally sacrifice my ISO so that I get the right shutter speed and I get the right aperture. And so, like, yeah, as a blogger, ISO isn't something that I'm totally concerned with. But then, like as a portrait photographer, if I am blowing up an image and it needs to be, 2 feet wide, then ISO is something that I would be concerned with, because then when I blow it up so big that you could really see the grain. So those are the three things that it controls. So now going back to my document, okay, so your camera, what it does is when it looks at the picture, it would figure out all those three things to get you a really nice exposure. But sometimes your camera isn't that smart, and it can actually be fooled. So, oh, hang on a second, I have a link here. What is this for? I think I have an example here.
I think the link that she's pulling up is to our website. I'm noticing that.
I wanted to give you guys some examples, so I pulled up some links.
So go ahead and click on that tab, and then I think we can see it. There you go.
So this is Kim's site. She's got some great images on here. They're really well lit. So if your camera, when it looks at this, then it figures out what to do, like which those 3 things to alter. Okay, so now, okay, say for this image here, for example, with this little girl and her washi tape. So your camera looks at this and it decides that this is the right exposure to take this image, and so it does that. But what I find sometimes, actually what I do, and this is actually my secret to getting better lit images, is to alter your exposure compensation. I know it's a big term, but don't be scared. It's really easy to understand. So basically what it is you're telling the camera to let more light into your photo, so your pictures are brighter. Does that make sense?
It does. You'll have to tell us again what it's called.
Okay. So it's called exposure compensation, and you can adjust this on your camera. Now, depending on, actually every camera, you can do this on, whether you have a big heavy camera or you have a point and shoot. Even my Android phone has this option where you can adjust your exposure compensation. I thought I had an article. Where did it go?
That's okay. And any of the links that we talk about tonight, we'll be sure to include on the event page too, for you guys to look at your leisure too.
Okay, so this is what the button looks like for you to adjust your exposure. Come on. Okay, so on a Canon, this is what it looks like. It'll have a little plus or minus sign here, or it looks like this. Does that look familiar?
Go ahead. Are you showing it to us live on you, or are you showing us a screen share because we can't see it?
Oh. Sorry.
It's okay.
Okay, can you see it now?
Yep, we can see it now.
Okay, sorry, I'm just got a screen problem. Okay, so this is a button you use to adjust your exposure compensation. So this is on a Canon, this is what it looks like. And then it also looks like this on the back of your camera. Kim, does this look familiar to you?
I'm using an older Canon, so I don't actually have this on the back of mine.
Okay, sometimes it's at the
I've got it at the top of mine, the right one. Mine's a very old one.
Yeah, and like it would look like this. It would have like a few dots and a 1 and then a +2 and then a 1 and a -2. It would look like this. So you just have to find where it is on your camera. And so in this picture here, what it's showing is that you see this little dot. It's right at 0. So this is telling the camera to take the picture as is. So the camera will figure out all the settings for you and it would take the picture. So what I normally do is I move this little thing to either like 1 dot over or 2 dots over or even to 1. And then that would take a brighter picture. Even when I'm just, taking pictures of my kids, I always have this like over at least 1 dot, because then it just makes their faces a lot brighter as well, and it's just a better lit photo, and I like it a lot more because I like brighter images for myself. So that's like one of my secrets here is that. So go ahead and find that on your camera and play with it. So with that said, your camera is pretty smart and it could figure out the settings for you, but sometimes it can be fooled. And so what usually happens is, for example, if you are taking a picture of a bird in the sky, and so you point your camera up at the sky, and you know how the sky is so bright sometimes, right? And then the camera freaks out. It says, hey, there's so much light coming in, then I gotta make this picture a lot darker because there's so much light going in. So then I have to, so your camera will automatically take a picture that is really dark. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Or, okay, so here is an example. Okay, so we're taking selfies here, and then see how the camera's pointing at the sky, right? So the camera looks at this, and he says, hey, this is so bright. I'm going to make this picture really dark. So then normally what it would do is it would make this so that your sky is properly exposed, making your faces really dark. So then if you know that your camera would do that, then you change your exposure compensation and you increase it. So you push the little dot to the right. That will make it brighter. And then so I think this, I probably push it to 1 or 2, like where the number is, it would say 1 or 2, to get our faces properly exposed. Does that make sense?
I love that tip. It's a great tip, yes.
Yeah.
And do you have any natural consequences when you bump up your exposure?
Do you have
do the colors get washed out a little bit, or just totally all it does is brighten it up?
Okay, so here's the thing. When you bump up your exposure is that you are sacrificing something, because in your settings, depending on how you have your camera set up, you remember one of those three things that it would change? Depending on how your camera you have your camera set up, if you brighten up your picture, it would either, oh, how do I explain this? It would change one of those, you would sacrifice something. So like when your camera is looking at the sky and it wants to expose for the sky, then it would use a certain setting with, say, an ISO of 100. But then because I bumped it up and it needs to let more light in, it will increase my ISO to maybe, say, 800, so then it could absorb more light. So then it would sacrifice something to get you the right exposure. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So just something we always have to kind of pay attention to and make sure it doesn't extreme it. Like that would make it a little more blurrier on the edges. So we have to pay more attention to that.
Right. So on the other hand, if you know how sometimes you're taking pictures of snow and your snow is gray? Has that ever happened to you?
You're asking the Florida baby. No, unfortunately, no.
Oh, okay.
Maybe. I'm just kidding.
Well, if you do, see, I just found this on the internet. I don't know whose kids these are, but you see how the snow is really gray, right? So, so then, like, this is another instance where the camera is looking at it, and it's saying, "Hey, like, there's so much white in here. I gotta make this image darker," which is why it makes your snow gray, because it's trying to let in less light. But then see how their faces are kind of dark, right? So this is another instance where you would want to adjust your exposure compensation so that it makes it bright. It makes the kids' faces brighter. And then, another thing is sometimes what it would do is if your background is too dark, because we've been talking about instances where your background is really bright, right? If your background is really dark, like here. So like this is all green, and then when the camera sees that, it says, hey, this picture is so dark, I'm going to let in more light. But then when it does that, what happens is the faces will become even brighter than what it should. So then this is a case where you'd have to lower your exposure compensation, so then your face is properly exposed. So it's not too bright, and it's not too dark. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. It's a great.
Okay. Okay, so you get this, right?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so that's really important. Once you understand that, then you can kind of know, and this is something that you got to play around with, and you have to keep adjusting until you get the right exposure that you want. So I would recommend that, I guess when you're doing your activity, it gets, here, let me just stop my screen share so you can see me. Okay. doing your activities, sometimes it's just really chaotic, right? Like things are happening and you're not quite sure what your camera's doing. So I would suggest setting up your activity first, and then taking a few test shots just to see if your light is right, and then get the kids in to do your activity. So for me, I found that helps a lot. Okay, so moving on. Okay, so now we're going to talk about how to take indoor pictures. And I'm going to share my screen with you again. Okay, so what I would say is every room in your house has a different window facing north, east, south, west, facing whichever way. So I guess you know your house best. So know when you get the best light in every room in your house and plan your activities accordingly. And then also know that the light also changes with season. So say if you get really great morning light in your bedroom at, say, 8 o'clock in the morning. In the fall, it could change, and you could get really great light at 9 in the morning or 7 in the morning. I don't know. So you gotta look out for these things and know where good light is at your home at any given time. Okay. So one thing to start, when you take indoor pictures, I would only start with one light source, meaning that you either actually start with one light source and just start with using window light. So sometimes, say if I'm shooting in my kitchen and I'm in front of a big window, so that's one light source. It's the window light, it's daylight coming from the outside. And I might have a light turn on. So if you have the light turn on, that's considered a second light source. So then I would turn that off and then just use the window light only. The reason for that is because, okay, we have to talk about technical things again. Okay, so the reason for that is you'll get different colors of light in your pictures and it'll look really weird. So say, for example, window light usually is very blue. And then fluorescent light, like indoor light, is usually very yellow. So then if you have a mix of these two things on your child, then like half of their face could be kind of blue and then the other half could be kind of yellow. Does that make sense? Because you've got two different light sources coming in. So that's why I recommend turning off the lights and then just using window light. So usually how if I'm using window light, this is how I would do it.
And our cameras are pretty smart. They figure it out when there's just one light source. It's as we start adding more and more sources that it gets a little wacky on us, would you say?
Right. Yeah, it does. And it's really hard to fix after. So when sometimes I forget to turn off a light, and when I do and my images look really funny, I just turn them into black and white. Oh, which is another tip. If the lighting on your image looks really funny, turn it black and white. Then you don't have to fix it. Okay, so let's see, where are we? Okay, so this activity here, so we are actually in our dining room, and we have, like if you're looking at this photo here, we have a really big sliding door right in front of her, and you can see the light coming into her face, and it's just lighting this part of her face. I do activities in front of the window. See, in our dining room, we actually usually have a table here, but for this, I totally moved our furniture around, moved it out of the way so that she can be in front of the window. And then, let me just go back to my document here. Okay, so I think this one is pretty self-explanatory. So right here, the window is, with this picture here, the window is right here, and she's right in front of the window. And I'm actually, my left side is totally pressing against the window to get this shot of her face. Does that make sense? So I'm shooting from right beside the window. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense? So I noticed, Kim, on with your images, you have some really great images in front of the window, which I noticed you've done. And then what you can challenge yourself to do is, I noticed a lot of times you're kind of like right beside your kids. Mm-hmm. Is that true? I could be wrong.
Yeah, no, many times, yeah.
Yeah, so what you can do is try to get closer to the window as you can so that you are getting a picture of them kind of like from the front side. Does that make
You're almost
sense?
where by the light source in essence, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm like right up by the window.
I think that's a great tip.
Uh,
Thanks for sharing that.
okay, I just want to make sure that I'm not missing anything
Now,
here.
do you ever find that you have issues with shadows when you're doing it like that? Because I know every once in a while I'll have, like, I think the lighting's great, but yet afterthought it's a lot more shadows than I anticipated.
Yes. So, okay, so what that is, how do I explain it? Okay. Okay. You see how in this, whoops, yeah. You see how in this picture, okay, let me just explain to you where I am. So I'm in Vancouver, Canada. We are 2 hours north of Seattle. So we're pretty up north compared to Florida.
Mm-hmm.
And for us, we're called a wet coast because we get a lot of rain. So we don't get a whole lot of sunlight unless it's the summer. And then with that, if we do get sunlight, like in this room here, when we do get sunlight, we get sunlight right in front of the window. And then you see how in this picture here, this is like really bright all around here, and then this is really dark here. Can you see that?
Yeah, you can see it.
Yeah, so that means that um, it's just the way the light comes in. So it's not something that I can really control. But that wasn't your question, was it? I totally lost my train of thought.
No, that's okay. But it explains that too, is we all need to factor in where we live and exposure. Like for me, there's always too much sun, and I'm trying to filter that sun down a little bit
Right.
because you just I kind of have to.
Right.
But like even in that image that you're showing right now, by her hand, it's shadowed. Like I just tend to have too much shadow, so that's one thing I need to improve on.
Right, because you're okay. So then, in this picture, compared to what you would get a way harsher light. Like ours is a really soft light. That's why the shadows here are kind of soft. If you get a lot of light, um, you're still in the shade, right? You're still inside.
Mm-hmm.
I
Yeah.
would move. I would move them back from the window. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So
Further from
if
the light source. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, okay. So, okay, I'm just going to pick this here. So if this is your window right here, or like if this is your space and your window is right here, for me, I would set up my kids like really close to the window so that they can get as much light, so I can get as much light as I can. But for you, because it is so bright, that I would almost move them back to, say, around here so that like the harshest light is always going to be here, and then as you go further back from the window, then the light kind of drops, right? So you got to figure out there must be a sweet spot that you can figure out where
The
you're.
lesson of the day is find your sweet spots in your home and the sweet times of day in your home.
Exactly. So then yeah, then you would get less shadows that way. And then the thing with shadows is I use programs where it would bump up the shadows. I know a lot of you guys use PicMonkey, and I don't know if there's a feature in there where you can bump up shadows. Is there?
Yeah, I think there is.
Okay, okay. Well, if that's the case, then you can bump up your shadows. So then you would have to fix that after the fact. But this is about trying to get a well-lit image like in the camera, so you have less work to do after.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, moving on. Okay, so when you face the window, that's what happens. The light would be on their faces, which is what you want. And if you are in front of the window, but their face doesn't face the window, then I can show you here. So right here, this is the couch, and the window is parallel to the couch. So you can see how the light comes in and it lights your face really nicely. But now watch what happens. Oh, here's the window, and then here's the couch. So see, now when they're not facing the window, the light is to their back. You see how it lights up this part of the face? and this part is kind of in the shadow. Like, it's just not as nice, right? And then so you see here my husband sleeping. You can see how his face is a little bit blown out, meaning that it's a little bit too bright. So that can happen when they're not facing the window. So that's something that you would try to avoid. But I know with kids, they move around, they jump around, so sometimes it's hard for them to get them to face the window. But if you're doing an activity, set it up so that they have to face the window. And then you will just have to be really close to the window to take the shots of them facing the window. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Okay, so another place in our home that has really good lights that you can probably find in your home too is the front door. For us, okay, so here, this is our front door, and you can see our door here. So I just open up the door, and I get all this beautiful light that comes in, and the light hangs out around here, like around the stairs, and it kind of drops off as you move back. So this is really good light. So I know it's a small space, and you might not do an activity in here, but in your home, you might have a large foyer that you can plan an activity in. So that might work for you too. So look for places where you can open a door, have a really nice window for the light to come inside, and do it in front of that. Okay, and then for your camera shutter speed, so remember we were talking about the 3 things that your camera adjusts to take a nice picture. Okay, let me just stop sharing my screen. We were talking about the 3 things that your camera looks at the 3 settings that it would change. So if you are bumping up your exposure compensation, it's sacrificing something. Sometimes that could be your shutter speed. So there was a question that was posted, and the lady was saying that her images aren't very sharp. And I think that the reason it is not sharp is because the camera didn't freeze the movement of the kids. So then if you want the camera to freeze the movement, I would set the shutter speed at no less than a fifth of a second. It's so technical, but I can't get over it. Like, that's just like what you need. So if you can get it 1/125th to avoid motion hands, because their hands move so fast. Sometimes it's in their faces. You can totally avoid that by making sure that it's in 1/120th of a second. Now, if the kids are moving faster, then I would use a faster shutter speed, like 1/600th of a second. I would definitely use a faster shutter speed. And then if you use a faster shutter speed, it would probably go up too, meaning that your image would probably be a little bit grainy. But that's okay. For blogging, to me. So yeah, so probably why your pictures aren't sharp. It's not because a DSLR takes better pictures than a point and click. Yeah. Let's see. Or because I have control over my settings on the camera, I always sacrifice my ISO to get the right shutter speed and the right aperture. Now, there are instances where when you're indoors, you just don't, and you bump up your ISO, your aperture is as, and you're still seeing movement. You can't get the right shutter speed. You just have to use. If you use, personally, I hate. If you can use it right, if you know what you're doing, then you can get a decent picture. Okay, so if you have, oh, I don't have it, but like most of your cameras probably have, oh, can you see? Have one that like pops up. So let me just show you an article here. Let me share my screen with you again. on some how you can alter your light. So and there's things that you could do to, they're called modifiers. So what it is, it's that you're putting something in front of your flash so that when the flash fires, it's not so harsh on your subjects. So here is a good example. See, they use a flash here, and then you see how it's like all blown out, and it's just not very nice. But when you use some kind of this diffuser, your flash is a lot better. So most of you probably either have this here or you have this. So to modify those things, actually this article is really good because it shows you the different kinds of diffusers you can get. So you can get a diffusion cap, which is like this little white thing here that they put in front of the flash, so then the light, when it comes out, it's not so harsh. Now if you have, if you have one of these, Kim, do you have an external flash?
I do not have an external flash.
Okay, it's actually really handy because the flash on top of your camera is great, but sometimes it's not very strong. So you're taking a picture and the flash goes off and your picture still is kind of dark. That's because the flash isn't bright enough. So you might want, if that's the case, then you might want to invest in one of these external flashes. And then if you use one of these, then also put, like, it's like different kinds of diffusers that you can get. You can get this thing. So just it's just to soften up the light. Let's see. So when you are using a flash, I would, if you're taking a picture of your kids, I would try to get them to stay away from the wall as much as possible, because this is what happens. You see how there's this huge shadow here? So if your camera fires a flash and your person is really close to the wall, it casts this really harsh shadow. Oops. So that's just something that I would avoid. But then if you have them away from the wall, then this shadow isn't so harsh. So that's a little tip there. Okay, so now if you have an external flash, and I'm going to stop my screen share because I need to show you something. Okay, so I have one of these. There might be some of you that have one, so I'm going to show this to you because it was a big help when I learned it. So when you put your flash in, most people, they would point their flash at their person. They would go like this, and then this flash would give out a total ton of light, and it just causes really harsh shadows, and it's just not very pretty. So then what a good tip is to point this thing so you can swivel it around so it's kind of like this. See, that's the front. I don't know if you can see. That's the side. So when I'm taking a picture, you see how this flash now is pointing to the wall. So what this does when it points to the wall is, if the wall actually is, I have what, 2.5 feet, 3 feet here, the light would hit the wall and it would bounce the light back onto your person. So then your person is nicely lit. Does that make sense?
I love that tip, yes. So you're just taking advantage of that space to bounce that wall. And even right now, if you guys look at between Amy's room and my room, she's doing that very same thing right now, bouncing some really good light around your room, where mine's all from the front of me and shadowed behind me. And it's a good example right now with that too.
Yeah, or another thing you could do is, if you don't have a wall behind you to bounce anything back, what you could do is point your flash straight up, and then it would kind of shoot it up to the ceiling, and it will illuminate your whole room. So that would work really well as well. So if you are taking a lot of pictures indoors and you find that the on-camera flash just isn't enough, I would invest in one of these. They're not that expensive. So I think you can get a cheaper one at maybe $350, and then you, anyways, that's totally up to you. Now I want to show you some examples of what happens when you use the flash. I think we are here. So with this picture, this is in the evening. There was no light in the room. It's pitch dark outside, and this is our dining table. And then so here I probably have a light source like up on the ceiling, but it still wasn't enough light. So what I did was I put the external flash on, and with this one I probably pointed it behind me. And then so like it just, like you see there's not a whole lot of shadows, and my picture is actually really flat, meaning that there's not a whole lot of shadows. But you know what, sometimes, as much as I don't like using flash, like if you need a picture, you need a picture, so you just get it done. This one is in the washroom. There's a light right here, but it was still not enough. So I actually have a door beside me, and I pointed the flash at the door so it would bounce the light back onto him, which is how you can see there's like little catch lights in the center of his eye. I don't know if you can see that, but that's a sign of a flash being used. And this one too, this is in the kitchen. So I probably pointed the flash up in the ceiling. I illuminated the whole room, which is why this is so bright back here and why this is bright as well. So these are just examples of how you can use an external flash to get the shots that you need. And you see how there's hardly any shadows, so it just makes your picture really flat. But that's okay. Okay. So let's...
I know we're all right now adding that to our Christmas wish list. That's a great tip. So thank you for sharing that with us.
Oh, you're welcome. Well, try it with your external flash first. This is another really good example here. So I have, this is Halloween, this guy's crying, and I have, right in front of him, I have a wall to my right, and it's light gray in color. So I pointed the flash at the wall so that when it took the picture, the light just bounced back onto him. And you can totally tell because you see how there's no shadow here, but then the shadow just kind of like starts right here and it's all the way here. So that's how you know the light is coming from this side and it's hitting him this way.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. Moving on. Okay, your Pinterest image. So as bloggers, we want to do as little work as possible when taking pictures of our kids, right? Like we just don't want, well, how should I put it? You know, like we just want to make really well use of our time, and when we are taking pictures of our kids doing activity, we will usually take our Pinterest image at the same time, right? Am I right in saying that?
Oftentimes, yes, I agree.
So
trying to crunch it all in, you're right.
So what I've noticed is that your Pinterest image, I feel, really is your money shot, because that's the shot that would get, like that's like your most inviting photo to invite people to come to your blog, and so you want it to be the best picture you can ever produce. And when I'm under stress, like when the kids are running wild and they're throwing Play-Doh at each other, or their hands are really dirty with paint or whatever, okay, it's a really stressful situation, and I you know, and then like just being in stress and trying to take my money shot just doesn't go. So as you know, and then so then afterwards I will take the activity or the food or whatever, and I would create my Pinterest shot after the fact. And then like I'm just a lot calmer, than I can think properly, then I can actually get a good shot. So it was just a gong show, right? Like her hands are dirty, we got the chickpeas in the oven, and she just wants to eat it, and things are dirty. Like I'm just not in the frame of mind. So then what I did afterwards is I took the thing of chickpeas, and I had time playing with it, and I was being creative with it, and you know that's so sometimes taking that extra, say half an hour, I guess at night when the kids are sleeping, is when you do this, is actually well worth it.
And I'll even throw this out, that if you're sitting there taking pictures ahead of time to kind of ensure that your settings are right before you invite the kids to an activity, that's a great time too to take that money pre-shot, because a lot of times with your Pinterest images, you don't want to give away everything that you're doing. It's that invite into it. So like if you think you might not have time afterwards, consider that 5 minutes beforehand as you're setting camera settings too.
That's a very good point. Yeah, that's a really good point. And I mean, with your Pinterest image, I always try to keep my backgrounds really simple. Melissa Klinker did a really good post on all the here. Let me stop sharing my screen. Yeah, she did a really good the really simple backgrounds you can use. I'm really simple, and I just use whatever I have on hand. So I'll use my coffee table, which is like a wood grain coffee table, or I'll just use a piece of craft paper.
Mm-hmm.
And then if you're doing food, then you just lay everything in craft paper and you just throw it out after. So it's really easy.
And I think as you're setting up your blog, having a consistent design look to it works well. So finding a few different backgrounds that you consistently use kind of lays an overall tone over your whole entire site. So that's a good thing.
I totally agree. Yeah, I totally agree.
A quick question on the page that I don't know how to pull it up, so I'm just going to read it to you. Yeah. It's from Amanda Vasquez, and she says, "Hi, ladies. I live in an apartment with windows only on one side in the always sunny Las Vegas. My only good light is like 6 to 7-ish, which is too early for crafts with the kids. How can I best try to avoid the harsh shadows? Putting something like a white foam board for flash to bounce off? My photos always have a gray tone, especially the white ones, and I don't have an external flash." So do you have any tips for her?
Sorry, with really harsh light, and
she's saying the best light is like at 7 a.m. in the morning, which our kids aren't going to be crafting at that time. So how does she work around only having one window? Do you use a board to bounce light? Because she doesn't have an external flash. I go outside is what I do.
Yeah, or curtain where it's kind of meshy curtain, and then so that you could block out the light and use that as a light diffuser. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Is that you could try? Yeah, of course you can go outside and you find open shade. Yeah, with really harsh light, I would try the curtains. I would try the netting. Yeah, just to diffuse the light a little.
All right. We'll keep going with Pinterest. I just saw it flash up on the screen, so I wanted to make sure we addressed it.
Right, Pinterest. With your Pinterest image, okay, so I would look up for, I put a note on here to look out for any distortion. And what I mean by that is that, okay, for example, your lens, whatever camera you use, I would assume you have a zoom. See these numbers here, like it goes from, like mine goes from 24 to 35 to 50 to 105. It's the focal length. So then if I say I'm at 105, then it's longer, then it zooms in. So when you are shooting at a focal length that is about 35, which is called, what it's called. But anyway, it creates distortions. Let me show you what I mean by that. These little parts, right? So if I'm shooting with a wide focal point, say a 24 or 35, then something happens in the lens where it would distort your picture, and it would make this really big, and it would make whatever's in the back really small. I mean, it's not like really big and really small, but there is a noticeable difference. So when I'm taking my images, I'm very aware of the distortion that the camera would cause. So what I would normally do is I would shoot at focal point of 50 mil, or I would zoom in and to avoid the distortion. So for this image, I probably zoomed in, and what I did was this was on a table, and say for example, I am standing, say, 1 feet away from the table, and I use my lens to zoom in all the way. This would be like all zoomed in, and I might see like this much. So what you have to do is you have to back up. So you have to back up so that your camera can see all of this. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So I guess my point is to watch out for any distortions, and if you notice it, I would just use your lens to zoom in and just back up so that you can get your whole picture. This is also another, if you are shooting in a room that has a bit of clutter and you don't feel like cleaning it up, then you could, let me see if I have an example here.
I'm going to throw this out there that all of us have clutter. It's part of being a parent and a family, and it's okay.
Oh, totally. Yes. Yes. And you know what? One thing I might want to mention, somebody said this to me, that, hey, like, your kids look like they're so well behaved and you have this like amazing true. I only show you what I want you to see. So, I mean, like, this is my right here, but behind me, there's a whole bunch of stuff. Right. So I'm only showing you what I want you to see, or I guess another good way to put it is the blog is for me and my kids to look back on. So I only want to post pictures that I enjoy seeing. So I don't enjoy seeing clutter, so I don't post pictures of clutter. Okay, so this image, for example, if I have clutter, say, over here, and over here, and I'm shooting at, say, a focal point of 35, it would show all the clutter. So then a good way to not have to clean up is to use your camera. So you would zoom in and you would back up so that your camera cuts out the stuff on the side. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So like here, this is pretty zoomed in because you can see the width between here and here isn't that wide. So I probably backed up, I zoomed in, and it cut out the sides here. And what you'll notice is that when you zoom in, your depth of field, meaning how the depth of field is, how do I explain this without sounding so techie? Is how sharp your photo is, I suppose, or how blurry your photo can get. So because I zoomed in, you see how this is blurry, right? That's what caused it. No, that doesn't sound right. But when you zoom in, you would get more blurriness versus if you use a wider focal point at, say, 35. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, sorry.
That was got really to see this too with on Pinterest. Some of these zoomed in images like that are what people are clicking more. So like it's a great technique to use, that little different angle that you can use and draw their eye in to find out what you were doing with that activity. So
that's really interesting that they would click in a zoomed in image.
Yeah. What are they doing? Let me find out. Yeah.
That's true. I guess when you zoom in, you're it's more inviting, I suppose. It's
you're
more
in the
intimate.
moment. Yeah, it's perfect. Yeah. Now I'm going to ask this because you keep showing us what lens are you using as you're taking some of these images? What? Yeah.
Let me just stop my screen. Most of the time I use this one because I'm lazy and I don't want to switch my other lenses. This is I shoot Canon. This is a 24 to 105, like 24. Okay, I have to go techie again. It's a 24 mil to 105 mil zoom lens. I bought it. Yeah. Okay. I remember on the Kid Blogger Network, she bought a 15 depth of field. That's another good lens to have, and that lens you wouldn't get a whole lot of distortion because 50 mil is how things normally. Yeah. Does that answer your question?
It does. I figured I'd ask because I'm sure people are thinking it. So, thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, you have. As I always believe that you can take a great image with whatever you have. I mean, I shoot a lot with my phone. I just know what I can do with it, and I know how to adjust my exposure compensation. I know what it can do. I know what it can't do. So like, just know your equipment really well and work within its boundaries. Okay, so really quickly, okay. For your Pinterest shot, sometimes you have to do it at use the flash. I think something to use these. I'm using it right now to bounce light onto my face. See, it's pointing to the bouncing light back onto my face. But we all know what these are, right? It's just a really simple, I think I got from IKEA. Like, right? So then you would be setting up your activity, you know, or if you bake, you know, on your table, you would style it really so that it looks really yummy, and then you just and you turn it on, and that would light your muffin. I don't know. I think it's $10. One of the tips, if you're going to do this, is that is a color light bulb. So remember we talked about color temperature, how it could be blue, it could be yellow. So I would find one that is daylight balanced. So then it's more to temperature.
Right. Can you grab that anywhere? Is there a special store you would have to get that from?
No, I think you just get Home Depot. It would tell you on the box the color temperature of it, and then sometimes it would have like cloudy to sun. So you would look for one that's more cloudy. Yeah, I think this is, I don't know what this is. It's a yellow light. Yeah, I would grab that because it's really smart. Your camera would look at the picture and go, hey, it's the sunset and it's really yellow. So I'm going to make this picture so it's not so yellow, right? And then it would do its also be fooled. Like we also indoors and they're totally yellow. Camera is fooled and it didn't apply the proper color balance to your image, and you have to fix it afterwards, which is a pain. That's when you turn it black and white. Okay, so yeah, so grab one of these. Oh, and then when you do use one of these, I would play around with it. So you would set up your thing on your table, and I would turn on the light and move it around your muffin to see where the shadow falls on it, to see what you like best. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
To your picture as well. Okay, so I'm just going to show you some really quick examples here of okay, so this one, I put the light point, like, and then because you see how my shadow is kind of down here, so that tells me that my light is up here. I like to put it elsewhere. For me, because I was trained taking pictures of people, they always at a 45-degree angle of the person, which is like kind of this idea. So I'm trained to light my things this way. Now this picture, you see how the shadow is kind of right here. It's on the upper left, so that tells me that my light is coming from this way. I was probably being really lazy that day and I didn't move my light. So that's why it's like that, but anyway. Yeah, so I have to tell you a secret, and it is one of my other secret weapons that I cannot live without. Of my studio. Let me show you. Studio. Okay, so here's us. Hello. Oh, what is this? Okay, so this is my studio. This is my computer right here. So right now I'm sitting right here. So this big thing here is my secret weapon. It's called a strobe light. And so like if you say go to Sears and take portraits, this is the kind of light that they would use. And I have a huge box on it, so which is to soften up the light. So what I do when I shoot is I would lay my thing here, and then I usually have my light over here, and then I would shoot from over here, or I would put my light over here, and then I would be here, so I get the background, I get the plain background. So you get the idea. So that is my secret weapon. I have it because I do portrait work in the studio. So sometimes I would like move this chair aside, and then I would have people in front. That's why I have the big strobe light. If you really want to make an investment, I would suggest getting one of these because it's so awesome. I can't live without mine. Here I am. Just, you know, I set it up, and what happens is there's a little trigger that you put on top of your camera, and then when you press the light. So with this, I don't have to do any, like all my images come up perfect, and I don't have to do any work with it afterwards. Like, it's so awesome. It saved me so much time. I don't really know how much they are. I got this one off of a friend. I think they might be $600 to $800, but you know, Christmas. I know mine looks really big, but you can get a softbox that is a lot smaller. Box, the harsher your shadow is going to be. So you just got to watch out for that. See my images, they're like just like filled with light, which that's the reason. It's because of the big softbox.
But I think we all have to look at, as a blogger, if you are making time and effort and putting into what you're doing, you do have to factor in, if I make that investment, will it make me the money in return? So those are decisions you have to make as you get going and get more experienced. But it's good to know that once you figure it out, it doesn't take much time. So like, figure out how much is your time worth, and it might be worth it to invest in that.
You know, I do of activities in the studio, and if I had to do that in my kitchen and have versus an activity in the studio, I'm half the time shooting, and I'm not even editing my photos. So that saves me so much time, and because it's fun. And they go, oh, actually, this is an investment for your children, not even for your blog, because now you can take selfies. You always have really great pictures of them. So this is for your kids. Anyway, okay, I think that's all the notes I have. Oh, I want to show you some examples. Let me share my screen with you. We're almost at an hour here.
So I'm going to close it up real quick as you show us some examples.
Yeah. Blog, and I think maybe Amanda took this.
This is Amanda's post from today from her Playful Preschool group.
So, okay, so here you see this picture. I can see that there is a light on top of him, and I would think that, yeah, and you see how his skin is kind of yellow? So there's something in the camera, like, so you could probably adjust the color balance in your camera so that his skin is not so yellow. Now, why did I, hang on a second here, mix kitchen light with flash color balance. Okay, so if you were, okay, so if I were to take this picture, what I would do is I would actually leave the light, and then I would use the flash on my camera, and I would diffuse it in some way. So you can, say, tape a piece of paper in front of the flash, so when it fires, the light just kind of like fills this in, so it's not so harsh. So that would probably make a brighter image, and that would probably help with your white balance as well.
All right. I'll be sure that Amanda hears that. And I can tell you, just because I've been at her house, that's from her kitchen table, which a lot of us craft with our kids at the kitchen table.
Yeah.
So that's where that light's coming from, and we've had like a week of rain, so there's no actual sunlight coming through. So again, as we approach winter, we're all going to be with those situations. So all these little tips that you've shared with us tonight are going to help make our images still look bright and colorful and inviting for your blog and for your pins on Pinterest and Google Plus and Facebook.
Yeah. So I really hope that helped. I really hope that helped. I know I kind of talked a lot.
No, so many great tips. I have a feeling there'll be lots more questions from the Kid Blogger Network for you. You have a wealth of knowledge that we're all like grateful for you sharing. So thank you.
Thank you.
So all the links that Amy shared tonight, we'll go ahead and put on the event page, so you guys can click through and kind of look at them. She shares, you could tell, some good resources of websites too. And then if you have any more questions, are you okay if they ask questions on the event page?
Yeah, of course.
Okay.
Yeah. I think a lot of people have some really personal. What we could do is we can do a critique. So it's really good things that you do, right? And then I can also show you some points of how you can improve. I think that would be really helpful.
If you want that, how should they contact you?
Good point. I don't know.
Okay, just say I'm interested. I let her pick my side apart a little bit, so I'm sure some of you guys would like to do that too. Thank you for your.
Oh, and I know it's really late for you, so thank you for doing this hangout thing, because I have no idea what I'm doing. So thank you.
It's a great resource. So I'm glad that we could sit in literally different countries and different time zones and chat and share the knowledge we have. So thank you. All right, well, we're going to close it out and just look for more ideas. I have a feeling, I did leave. Amy has some great photo tips on her website and a whole nother Pinterest board full of photography pins. So those are on the event page. So don't forget to check those out too. All right. Thank you so much. Bye.
Good night.